Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Will Kern from Endless Entertainment, and welcome again to another awesome edition of hashtag Event Icons. We are on episode 7. 7 weeks have flown by so quickly. I feel like I say that every week, but I'm just so excited for this week's episode. I'm recording live from the offices of Groove Boston. Really cool event company. You guys should all check them out. Really honored to be here. But this isn't about me. As you guys know who have tuned in before, this show is 100% about you, the audience, getting to ask our awesome event icons questions. So throughout the show, tune in, and you guys are going to want to ask questions over in that chat pane like crazy. Our guests today are going to answer all of your questions and are really here for you guys. So make sure that you guys are asking questions. If you type /Q over in the pane and type /Q, then your question, it'll go into our queue. So many Q's involved in this, and we will answer them right away. If you don't know what that is, just feel free to ask a question in the chat. We'll figure it out. If you're not watching this live right now and you're watching this, on our blog, you're definitely going to want to be here. We do this show every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, and you are going to want to be here because you get to ask questions and interact and be live. This is like a live radio show. So, and as Frankie said, we want you guys to share this with a little bird and share this on social media. So if you're tuning in live right now, on the left-hand side, click the post to Twitter and Facebook button, smash it up, give us tons of likes, give us tons of shares, and let's get this in front of as many eyeballs as possible and get as many people in here so we can have an awesome dialogue and an awesome conversation. So speaking of absolutely awesome conversations, and thank you again for everybody who tuned in right now. I'm already starting to blow up. You guys are awesome. Speaking of awesome conversations, I want to bring in my guests, and they're kind of a package deal. So I want to bring both Jon Trask and Mike McAllen in. Mike, if you can call in as well. Jon and Mike, these guys are awesome. So I'm like fangirling out over here. I met these guys. Fangirling out, yes, very much fangirling out. Oh my gosh. These guys, I met them at IMEX this year at the Event Technology of the Year Awards. Great place for us to meet. And I was just, again, fangirled out. I was like, I've heard about them before. I've listened to Mike and Jon's podcast before, and met them, and I was like, dream come true. Oh my gosh, fangirl. Jon and Mike created this awesome platform. You guys all know that I'm an AV guy. I own Endless Entertainment, an AV company. They created this awesome thing called AVForPlanners, which I'm going to tease you guys a little bit. I'm going to let them explain it a little bit. But AVForPlanners is possibly the coolest thing helping our industry, helping customers basically get the perfect AV for their event. Also, if you didn't know, they also host their own podcast called the MeetingsPodcast, which you guys definitely have to subscribe to. This awesome guy, Will Kern, was just interviewed. Best episode ever. Yeah. And Mike actually interviewed me on his podcast, which actually was the first time we recorded on Blab. So in theory, you could say like he kind of broke my Blab cherry. He's the one. He could be said to be the guy who he could be playing for hashtag Event Icons basically. So thank you so much, Mike, for that. So these guys are awesome. They're super legendary in the industry, and I just want to jump straight into questions. But first of all, thank you guys so much for being here. So if we get a round of applause in the chat for these guys, they're absolutely awesome. So I'm gonna start off with a question, and then if you guys on the audience have any questions, type /Q, and then we'll jump right on into those. So the first question I have for you guys is, what got you guys into the events industry? We'll start with Jon.
Okay, I'll jump in with that. I sort of fell into it by accident. I worked in radio, and I spent some time doing radio news, and I ended up leaving the radio industry, and I was working in retail and kind of hating what I was doing and wanting to get back into something that was more creative and more interesting. And I saw an advertisement in the paper, those old printed things we used to get on the doorstep every day. And it was looking for people to work at the Disneyland Hotel who had knowledge of either video or audio. And I thought, well, I know both of those. I had taken a lot of classes in college. And it was for a company called AVHQ, which doesn't exist anymore. But I went over and I ended up getting a job with AVHQ there. And that was now almost 30 years ago. So I've been doing AV like 29 years after falling into it there at the hotel.
Wow. And then, what was well, I'll get into that in a sec. Okay. And then Mike, I mean, what got you in the industry?
I got into it the first time. So when I got out of college, I became a fireman for about 8 years, and I was a fireman EMT for a long time. I got injured, and I broke my leg really badly. Actually, made me have to retire from doing that. And my roommate at the time. I did my rehab, and my roommate at the time worked for a production company, and it was better. My knee was better, but I couldn't really do much. But she's all, "Do you have a passport?" And it was like during the .com stuff, and I said, "Yeah, I got a passport." She goes, "You want to go to Korea and do an Oracle show with me?" And I said, "Okay." And that's how it started. And then it was a great company. Envision Communications, they do like Oracle World, and they do Dreamforce. Well, they did Dreamforce a while back, not now, they don't do it. But we did all these great, it was the ride in that whole .com thing, which was fantastically fun.
Awesome.
And that's how I got into it. So then after working there for a while, then I started my own production company. So that was about 13 years ago.
That's awesome. And you still are doing the production company, correct?
Yes, we do a lot of meetings, video. John and I both worked there. John and I started the podcast together after John called me every 2 months to ask for business for AV. I thought, this guy's great. He makes a lot of phone calls.
Awesome.
And he's a nice guy, so we started working together, and we've been working together for how long now? I don't even know.
Gosh, it's like 6 years or something.
Yeah, 6 years.
EFFs forever. Or I guess.
Oh God, yes.
Yes. So, can you guys explain a little bit, what do you guys do? Explain like as if I'm a 5-year-old, which I'm almost there. What do you guys do on a day-to-day basis now? Because you guys do so much.
You want to jump in on that, Mike?
Well, let me start out by saying that we have a lot of existing clients with Grass Shack Events and Media, which is my production company that we both work at, and that kind of AVForPlanners evolved out of that because we were doing so many proposals. We were finding clients that were just having full-blown proposals done when they just needed their AV vetted. And, it's a lot to put into the creative and everything behind events. So we just started thinking about doing more, helping them out in that case, because a lot of people are not technical. I'm not actually at all. I'm more of a production guy, I do more of the creative. John is really technical, knows AV up and down. And I think that's kind of on a day-to-day, we have clients, like I have meetings today, 3 meetings for stuff we're working on projects, but then we still work for AVForPlanners doing that too. So it is it's very busy, Will.
Awesome. And then, go ahead.
We wear a number of hats because we're jumping between doing production work and then doing the evaluations, the analysis, and helping people. Really, kind of the mission of our company on the AVForPlanners side is to help people have better meetings. Because being an AV guy for so long, I would watch people make horrible mistakes. They would make decisions based on kind of bad data because all they're getting is the data that a salesperson is giving them, and they don't have a way to analyze that. They don't have a way to understand it. So they just are getting this list that looks like a truck packing list of gear and people, and it says, here's what you need, but there's no context to it. So we can give them some context. We can give them some advice and say, hey, here's a way to improve your meeting, or this might be something that maybe you don't need. And maybe we can take those funds and we can put them over here for something that you'd rather have. We can improve the lighting, or we can add a system for audience response, which you don't have the budget for, but maybe by scaling down your projection requirements, we can fit that in now.
Absolutely. So you guys talked a little bit about AVForPlanners. I want to make sure that everyone knows what this is because it's an awesome tool. Can you explain what AVForPlanners is and kind of what the various things and capabilities that you guys have?
Mike, do you want to do any of that? Or you want me to just dive
Might
into
as
it?
well keep going, John. You're on a roll.
All right.
He's on a roll.
Keep at it. Well, basically, we started out with an RFP builder because the first step in making this process be better for people is helping them put together their needs on paper. And we kind of realized that, I'm an AV guy. If I don't need to ask you how many condenser mics you need. What I need to know is how many people are going to be on stage, and I'll be able to tell you how many microphones you're going to need. And so we ask the questions in the RFP builder in very plain language, and we try and make it very friendly and not techie and intimidating so that people can go through it, they can put down their needs, and then we take that RFP and we give it back to them. That's a free service. You can just go there and build that RFP and have no further obligation. If you want to use our services, we'll take it to our database of companies, which we've been building up over many years. So we have thousands of companies literally in the US, and we will take it and send it to 3 of those companies at your direction. We'll agree with you on who you want to send it to. We'll take those quotes back, and then I have a team of evaluators, people who've been in the industry 10 to 20 to 30 years like I have. I can give them those quotes, the RFP, and they'll sit down and they'll do an analysis of it. They break everything down by department. They say, here's what we like about the video, here's what we think could be improved, and so on. And we give that all back to the client and let them make their own decision on who they want to contract.
That's awesome. I mean, like, so ultimately it's also a huge time saver too for them. Not only is the knowledge aspect that, not a lot of people know what a Mac 250 is versus a Mac 700 is, right? But also it's allowing them to free up time and delegate, which, ultimately is like a godsend for event planners, right?
And that's actually one of the things that we've been developing over the past 6 months or so is a little bit of a new area of the company that we're working with some of the larger third-party companies. And we're coming in basically behind the curtain as part of their team. Awesome. So again, they can just delegate to us. We can go out and we can, at that point, even do the negotiation for them and, put together things sort of like a hotel commission on a commissionable basis and bring it back to their people who are selling the rooms and these other things that they know well, and give them that ability to also sell the AV as part of their package. But it's AV from a place of knowledge. It's not just getting an Excel sheet and filling it out and zipping it off to a bunch of companies you found on a Google search.
Awesome. I love it. Mike, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I was just saying it's been pretty interesting to see how it's saved even people with companies that we've worked with, how much money they actually save in the long run and how happy the AV companies are because it shortens their work. They don't have a lot of the back and forth since they're talking to people that understand what's going on. Everybody's winning, really.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know, because I think a lot of times there's going to a bid process or having multiple companies look at a quote can sometimes have a really bad rap in the industry. Like vendors sometimes, for example, are just like, if you're bidding, obviously you don't value our services. Why, and sometimes it creates price wars. What recommendations do you guys have for people who are maybe putting together their own bid process for AV? How can they make that process a little bit more streamlined so they get the best vendor possible?
I would say, first off, be transparent about it. And, some people will try and hide a lot of things about that process. And if your organization requires you to get 3 bids, and there are organizations that have that requirement in their purchasing department, be upfront about it. I'm going to send this to 3 companies, and you're one of them. Don't send it to 50 companies. Don't paper the town in it. That's one of the features of our system with AVForPlanners is we send it to 3 companies. And if one of those companies declines to bid, then we'll send it to someone else. But the idea is, for the work that you have to do a really good proposal and really put some thought into things, people need to have a reasonable expectation that they have a shot at getting the show. And so, 3 bids is a good place to start. Maybe you're doing the in-house and 2 other local companies, or a national company, a local company in the in-house, but approach it methodically and again, be transparent about it. I'm always transparent with the vendors I'm working with when we're doing production. It'll be, okay, you're going to bid this show against, 2 other companies. And oftentimes I'll even tell them who they're bidding against. I'll tell them what the budget is. And those things help, because if you've got a budget that's at a certain level and you just tell the guy your grand dreams, you may get a $100,000 quote for a budget of a $20,000 show that you have. Tell them that up front and use that money wisely then. By giving them the opportunity. I'll tell people a lot. I don't require things like specific models a lot of the time. If I have flexibility, I'll say, what projector do you have between 5 and 10K that you can give me? Because
and for those who don't know what 5 to 10K is.
Yeah, that's the lumen rating, the brightness of the projector. The reason I do that is I want the company to be able to use their inventory the most effectively, because that's what they can discount the most effectively and give me the price that I need. So as long as if I have something specific that I need, I'm going to say, this is what I need, and I got to have it. But if I have that flexibility, I'm going to pass that on to the possible vendors and let them give me their best package out of what they own.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
I was going to just kind of build on that, saying that it's interesting to in our industry about budgets and how people come up with the number that their budget for their show should be. Right. And I think AVForPlanners really helps that, because we will really tell you what your budget should be. Yeah, and sometimes you come across, they're going from last year, totally different venue, different city. Things really change, so it's really handy to know, really what area your budget should be in for what you want for your show. There's the fine line of how you want to present your show, but awesome. Coming across with exactly what that budget should be, it's a great way to figure it out, and that's, I think, been very helpful to a lot of planners using our service.
Absolutely. I'll totally echo 100% what you guys are saying. So, from a vendor perspective, vendors want to be treated like humans, right? We want a legitimate shot at doing the business, and we don't want to feel like we're just another number. I heard we got a bid, and I heard from another vendor like, oh, hey, I saw you were on this bid. And we were kind of talking about it. He's like, yeah, it turns out I wasn't CC'd on some email or whatever it was, but there was like 50 people on it. And I'm like, well, great. Like, so obviously you don't really care who Endless is, because we're just another email address to you. It's kind of like that corporate drone mentality. I'm just another number to you. But I've always found when they're super transparent and you really communicate, everyone's going to work really hard to try to get your business. And ultimately, if you say, hey, this is what my budget is, this is what I'm trying to do, we're going to get you something really, really accurate. And we also feel care for it. So we're going to bend a little bit backwards for you too. So that's a great question. Mr. Crowd Mike's in the house has a question for us, and I know, John, you're really excited to answer this one. So Sean had a question that says, have you built a crazy list of venues and what AV they have in-house, or a huge list of AV companies around the country? So maybe talking a little bit about how you guys basically source all of those bids very, very quickly.
Well, we've actually done both, and it's an always evolving sort of thing, because when I went out and started looking, when we first started this process, there was really no good definitive list of AV companies in the country. You just couldn't find it. It's just nobody had it. Even a group like Infocom, the ICIA, which is the industry organization, theirs has improved over time. But we started building from two directions. We initially started building by putting the company and then the venue. And we realized that had to flip, because the venues never move, but the companies change frequently. It just happens that way, as much as people wouldn't like it. So what we do now is we have a list of every venue, and as we discover them, we're putting them in. And as we find there are places that aren't appropriate, we're even taking them back out. We'll have maybe a Best Western or something that got in there, and they just don't really have any meeting space. So we'll pull them back out of the database. But then I have a way to filter it, and I can build a list of non-in-house locations of AV companies. And that's something important to note as well. In our database, we did not just list the company, but we're listing by location. So if it's an AV company that has 15 offices, we're listing each of those offices. And so right now I've got something like 15 to 1,800 individual AV offices around the U.S.
So
who aren't in venues.
So you see, this question was sent out by these either Tim or Sean. I don't know which one of these guys is on here, but
it's Sean. Sean's the hustler. He's like the sales guy.
Wants to buy the list. But now that the Crowd Mike's has funding, maybe we can come up to something.
It's an offline conversation.
It's an offline conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. For those who don't know Crowd Mics, if you don't watch this show, they have a really awesome app that turns your smartphone into a microphone. You got to have it at your event. It's awesome. Yeah, they're basically unofficial sponsors of this because they always get mentioned every time we have this podcast. So I got to start charging them apparently. Yeah, I got to go with Mike on they have funding now. Come on. The money will stay in Arizona at least, right?
Yeah. Oh, they're local. Are they not close to you? Are they?
Yeah, they're over in was it Mesa, right, Sean? Something like that. They're really close. So we meet up for lunch all the time. So when I'm in town, apparently, unlike today in Boston.
Mesa, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I'm really curious to know. So you guys have obviously sourced all of these. You've worked with so many different AV companies. Is there something that you think that that all AV companies, you found that the ones who put successful bids that seem most successful, was there a commonality across all of them? For example, did they own all of the equipment? Did you find that they had all their staff in-house, that they had a certain level of clients? Obviously every scenario is different and the ability to service a client is totally different, but there's got to be some sort of hidden secret sauce that was making a successful AV company.
You want to go first on that, Mike?
No, go take it, John. I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about it.
Well, I found one thing is an attention to detail and a lot of questioning and a lot of thinking through of the process. I can tell you on a show that I'm doing, I've had conversations that have literally lasted 5 or 6 hours where we will talk through, the project manager and I, what is going to be happening over and over. So it's okay, at 6 a.m., the lighting truck arrives. We've got 4 guys there on a 5:45 a.m. call. Is that enough guys to get that part into the room? We're going through all of these things. We're pre-visualizing. We're talking about what pieces need to be in what place to make everything stay on schedule. And I find that a lot of the good AV sales guys have that ability to sit there and really analyze the meeting. And they come back to you oftentimes with really good questions that you haven't thought of. It'll be a question of, okay, well, you've said you're doing this, but what about this? And that engagement and that ability to look at the show from a perspective of how am I going to create this is what I find sets a lot of companies apart, because there are guys who literally it's okay, well, this is in the grand ballroom A, this is how we do it. And they just kind of dump a standard sort of quote in and shovel it out at you. The good guys will have overtime on their bid, and they'll say, well, we looked at the schedule and we saw that you start at 6 a.m. and you're not going to be out till 7 p.m. Even if we take the break in there, you're going to have 2 hours of overtime, for this reason. And that type of thought process leads to a successful show.
Interesting. So they sometimes being able to catch them that they've thought of all the details. So sometimes maybe it's up to the planner to ask really good questions too. So why did you choose that specific fixture? If they say something like, oh, it's our standard, it's ever we do it for all of our events, it kind of shows that maybe they haven't thought through exactly what your needs are.
Yeah. They haven't really paid attention yet to what it is. And I find that happens with some companies where suddenly you get a week out from the show and now it's on their radar. Now they have to load a truck and now they're asking you questions like, oh, wait a minute. Now, did we really need, these, whatever? Yeah, that's why they're on there.
I love this. This is like my life story, by the way. So, Mike, what about you? What commonalities have you seen in great AV companies that you've loved to work with?
Well, there's a couple things. I was thinking about how AVForPlanners has been working with, a lot of companies have national accounts with AV companies, and they don't check. And it's been interesting for John and I to get some of these. Oh, we've worked with these people. They take care of us, right. And we'll get but we'll do the evaluation and they'll have it all in front of them and they'll really see that they're kind of not, if you don't check what you're doing, you don't really get, with anything, you always kind of have to check on things. So it's been interesting to see how surprised they are that they're not getting really what they need for their shows. And so I think the one thing is the conversations that, as Sean was saying, how you get a good salesperson with an AV company will actually talk the whole thing through with you. We found with our evaluations, it's great because then the planner now becomes a technical person because they're just going through it and going, well, let's look at these projectors and why do you have the,
I love it.
Yeah, and it's good. And then actually the AV companies don't mind it because, hey, they get to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about, So that didn't answer your question at all, but that was on my mind. So, yeah.
But no, improving those conversations is what we want to do. I mean, across the board. That's why we made the RFP Builder free. Is we want to help the whole industry have some better conversations about this stuff, because it's not going to improve unless we figure out a way to get people talking and looking deeper at what they're doing, as opposed to just, this is how we've always done it.
I love it. I love how it's really, really interesting because on the, for me, from the vendor side, I've seen a ton of, people, like, I think that the clients I love to work with too are the ones who are having those sort of conversations. But the interesting thing is the ones who usually end up are really hard to work with and getting the right bid and everything like that are the ones asking the more like surface level questions. Like, so you own all your own gear, right? Okay. So tell me, like, do technicians have a lot of experience? Tell me all those things I was saying that you think that would lead to a great vendor. Turns out it's all about that intangible conversation that you're going to have for sure. So I love that totally.
Because the thing is, there are a lot of companies that have great techs, but those techs are all out on shows. And, if another show comes along at the same time as yours, the company is going to share their resources. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of places you can go get labor. There are a lot of places you can go get equipment, but it's the management. It's the person who's project managing that show. It's the salesperson who's managing that show that's really going to make it happen. Because I've done shows with 100% sub-rented gear and 100% crew I didn't know. And we've been successful because we plan going into it and we're ready for whatever situations might arise in that place.
Awesome. So we're talking about great conversations, and Sean had another really great question. He's on fire today. He asked, how do you educate planners when it comes to AV? And then how much effort do you put into that? So almost along the same lines, like how much education and how do you do it?
Well, I think it's interesting about the educational portion. When we were talking about building AV4Planners, I remember walking to one of John's sessions at one of these things, MPI, PCMA, whatever the hell it was.
It was MPI Salt Lake, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
And the room was packed. And I was just thinking, because AV is really a sore part for a lot of planners, and it's a very scary thing because everybody used to have I guess they don't have VCRs anymore, but they used to have the blinking 12, and it's just one of those things. It just, you just need to look at it a little bit to fix it. And I think that to me kind of, there's a big need for more education in AV, I think, in the whole industry. I also think there is a problem with people not getting it too. I think they need to get more. And I think that is a big, we have done and we're doing a whole, video course basically on all AV. And we've been working on it for a while now. I think there's like 80 videos or something. And
the help videos for our site we're building up so that people can have a visual to watch.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you think that as much as the education, so, like for example, Endless, we're writing a lot of blogs on, all the tips and tricks and things like that. Do you think that the video element is it something that maybe people need? Maybe it's like the text is too much?
I don't know. Well, when something breaks in your house, where do you go? You go to YouTube, right? You don't go call anybody. You go to YouTube and you try and figure it out. And there's, and I think that's kind of the future. That's my personal opinion. I think that's the future. You just got a how-to on, more video stuff because someone can go and look it up. Go, what the hell is this? And
absolutely. Do you guys have any? Sorry, John. You go ahead. I totally interrupted you.
No, I think it's a learning style thing too. I think you put things out in a number of different ways. You do live talks, which both Mike and I have done. You do blogs and printed things and things that people can read, and you do videos because people approach this stuff differently. And I know the way that I started kind of down this whole path was probably about 14, 15 years ago. I was spending a bunch of time explaining what seemed to be relatively simple concepts to me about some monitors and things to a planner. And I came out of that, and I happened to be talking to the director of education off the board of my local MPI chapter. And I said, we should have some kind of class on helping people understand AV better, because they don't really get it, even though they've been a planner for a long time. They're not understanding it. And he went, great, you're doing the April meeting. And so I ended up doing that and then some other talks from there. And even the latest CMP study guide, I was lucky enough to be asked to contribute to. So I did a big chunk of the technology chapter with a lot of these ideas of, conversation and finding the right people and things like that. And so, you try and get to people where you can, and you try and find the right avenue that they're going to be able to listen to. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's auditory, sometimes it's printed.
It's interesting. We're also, right now I'm working on a video with Grass Shack. It's for Avon Foundation for Women, and we do video projects for them. And this one's about metastatic cancer, which isn't the best thing to talk about. It's cancer that the person's going to die from. But as we're having this conversation about how we're going to shoot this video, how's the tone going to be, their whole thing is to educate them. And saying that, John, it's funny, the conversations come up now in meetings. Actually, we had this conversation about like HubSpot stuff. It's like, so, we were talking like, so we're going to shoot this video, it's going to happen, but other people want to get it in different ways. So we'll get the transcript from it, and then we'll break that up into a bunch of blog posts for them. And then we'll also do snackable content because nobody likes to watch a full video, right? So we'll cut it up into like a bunch of other little things so they can share it all over the place, do a slide share of it, do everything, put it everywhere. It's funny how education now, you're right, like people learn differently. Yeah. And people don't like to read a lot of stuff too. I mean, nowadays people are going shorter and shorter and shorter. Attention spans are just going,
Right. I know I haven't picked up my phone the whole time we've been on here, and it's killing me.
I actually just put an app on my phone, and it shuts your phone down. It'll call, but you can't use it at all for so much time. It's called, I can't remember the name of it.
Airplane mode?
No. It's like you can't use it. Like you can't for so long.
You're growing. It like locks you out.
Anyway, it locks you out. Yeah. And it's been great because it's like, focus. I got to focus,
Yeah.
And that's.
Yeah. I think the education portion's like super important. I say that I will say that I probably spend 75% of my actual like job time educating people on AV, and the rest is all, things actually doing AV, like planning the events and everything like that. Sitting down, having conversations with people, doing things like hashtag event icons, having those conversations, I think is just really, really huge. And so I think one thing that maybe you should look in your AV company, Endless does this, is educate you for sure. Like, don't like let them walk you through the quotes. We want you to be knowledgeable, because then here's the thing, it makes it so then that way it makes it even easier for us to work together and like figure out how to leverage our relationship together. So as well.
Absolutely.
Plus, like, everyone wants to help eventually, right? It's like the ultimate purpose in life. Speaking of education and kind of, how much we do educate and how do you educate people, do you guys have any recommendations? I mean, we're going to do this again at the end with resources, but do you guys have any recommendations for places to go learn AV, like blog posts, PDFs, or anything like that to share?
Well, we have a blog on AVForPlanners, and we have one on Grass Shack, along with the MeetingsPodcast. So those are resources that we've personally created to try and help. I actually did a short AV hints and tips book, which I put into the Apple bookstore, and so there's a way to access that. I haven't gone there lately and played with it, but like on our blog on the AVForPlanners, I was even just doing some short posts where I was doing a glossary. Here's an AV term, and I would put a picture up that would illustrate what that term was, and just do a couple sentences about what is a motor, what is rigging, or something like that, so that people can just even have that short bite thing and go on there and say, okay, well, that's a picture. That's what truss looks like. Now I understand what my quote says when it says truss. Didn't hear you, Will.
Awesome. How do you guys learn like about AV and get into it? Was it because we have this conversation all the time in the industry? Is like, what's the best way to train someone who has no experience in AV?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I worked for a company in North San Diego for most of the 90s, and we used to go out and do a lot of kind of like roadshow stuff. We would do these pharma meetings, and I actually would bring our new techs in some of the time, and we would make them set up a meeting room in the warehouse, because some of the way to learn this is being actually hands-on. You just really need to understand what we would do is we'd tell them, you have to pull this show. We would give them what the show was. They would have to wheel all of that stuff into a taped off area, and they couldn't go get anything else. They had to use what they had put on the cart to set up this room with 6 table mics and a podium mic.
What do you mean? You can't go back to the warehouse and go get it?
Right. And so, it's really practical knowledge. I had a funny moment that I've used as a story sometimes, because one of the last times I used slide projectors on a show was
I don't think Will knows what that is.
Hey, I grew up from a time when there was no technology too.
we had a dental photography group that needed to put 35 millimeter slides onto the screen, and they needed to get them very high up, and we had a low ceiling. It was a Ritz-Carlton. So I'm talking to the producer about how we're going to do it. And it's like, okay, well, we'll take 54-inch carts and we'll drape those, and we'll put a stacker with a extension on top, and then the projector. And so we go through all this stuff. Well, the gear shows up on site, and there are all the 20-year-old techs walking around this stuff with no idea what to do. And finally I said to one of the guys, do you guys know how to set this stuff up? It's like, no, we were saving that for last because we haven't ever done it before. And so I did a short little instruction on how to put the stuff together, and what we were using what for and all of that. And I realized at the time I was doing it, I was teaching Latin to people. I was teaching them a dead language, because I had this great knowledge that I had built up over, at the point, probably 15 years, but it was dead now. Nobody's using slides anymore. And so I've had to relearn what I know 3 or 4 times in 30 years. I mean, you have to keep growing with it, or you're not able to keep up. Awesome. And that's one of the things of AVForPlanners too. We've got the people who've kept up on it, advising, rather than leaving people who maybe learned it when they were getting their CMP, but they haven't kept up on it.
Absolutely. Like, so continuously learn and grow as, because I mean, the technology is changing. That's I think one of the most interesting things about AV too, is that, this isn't like layout and design, because that, a table has been a table for years, right? So it's like, once you learn that, you're like, I'm good. But AV, it's like, oh, I just learned how to set up a projector. And they're like, 10 years later, like 10 years from now, we're going to be like holograms and all these things like that.
Right.
Like,
right.
Wherever we are.
That's why I try and go to LDI or Infocom or as many related shows. I may even try and go to NAM next week when it's
awesome.
Here in Anaheim, just because you have to stay up on these things. I walk through LDI and I'm just floored, because they're doing things now that we couldn't even imagine doing 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
There was a great thing at LDI 2 years ago when I went, where it was a body pack you could put on a presenter, and all of the moving lights would follow the presenter.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Based on, near field and location, so cool. They could do that. And they had walls where you could walk up and do the Minority Report thing, sliding windows around. And, it's amazing the things that are out there already, and finding ways to work those into the meeting. If somebody's just got the knowledge that they gained 10 years ago, they don't even know that it's something available to them or something they can think about.
That's awesome.
A good point.
That's awesome. Is there any like cool pieces of technology that you guys have? You know, you talked a little bit about that cool tech, like having the ability for the lights on mech move you and everything like that. Is there any cool pieces of technology that you guys are seeing that you guys think are changing the industry or you think will change the industry?
Well, I know lighting, I think has been an area that, for one thing, it's gotten a lot more green. It's a lot more power efficient and easier to do. And one of the things I always tell people is you can create so much with lighting. You can do so much mood-wise and things. And I'm finding, I just saw something yesterday about like retrofit for ETC lights. And it's not something that sounds really sexy, but it's just a way where you can take this light and instead of it being a high energy light, you can now do a white LED out of it and retrofit it. And so being able to get white light was one of the issues of like LEDs. When they first came out, they were dim and it was hard to get a pure white. And that keeps improving, so you now have a greener product. It's easier to use. It's easier to set up, and it uses less energy in the process while doing a better job.
But wait, how will new engineers know how to not touch the light bulb of a Source 4 Lico? Old school event lighting guy problems right here.
Someday they may not have to carry a C-wrench in their back pocket either.
How dare they? They're so spoiled, these children these days.
but yeah, it's, I remember the same thing with video, because when I started with video projection, it was 3 guns and you had to converge those 3 guns. So we all carried around a little screwdriver we called a tweaker, which had a Phillips on one end and a flathead on the other and was about that long. And you would get inside the projector and be turning potentiometers to adjust each of the guns and align them. And when we went to LCD projection and stuff, that was just, you mean I don't have to converge the projector anymore? I can just aim it at the screen and focus it, and that's all I have to do.
Auto keystones.
Yeah, those things that creep in. One of the things that I did a session on why does AV cost so much a few years back, and I pulled some stuff on video projection. And the thing is, the prices have stayed relatively the same, but the capability of the equipment is so much beyond what it was. And that's what I was trying to explain to people in this class without getting too wonky deep down into it. But it's like, you paid $450 for a 32-channel Allen & Heath mixer to me in 1995. And I had to have a big effects rack with that cost you another $500, which was full of compressor limiters and EQs and things that I needed to have my audio engineer make your show sound good.
Yep.
Now you can walk in with a digital mixer.
I love this.
Pull everything up. It's all stored. It's on a USB from the last time you were in the ballroom. You've got the settings even.
Yep.
And so all of that is so much easier to use, and yet you're not paying that much more.
Yep. I love that. Technology. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's not sexy stuff. It's not like holograms or whatever. But the funny thing, like the hologram that everybody was talking about when they did that out of Coachella, that's Pepper's Ghost. It's a trick from the Victorian era. It's not that different than anything else. All they did was adapt it to video. And it's, a Mylar screen at a 45-degree angle that they're projecting onto. And so, some of the old ideas come back around too. We used to have wide screens for those slide projectors I talked about earlier. We'd have a 10 by 30 screen. And then we went through this moment when everybody got rid of all of those wide screens because now you just had 4:3 projection. Then we went to 16:9 projection. Now you've got blends, and now you've got people doing 500-foot long projection that's 8 feet high and 500 feet long. And
full circle.
So you can use suddenly those old screens got useful again because now you can format the video into that size.
That's crazy. So eventually we're going back to 4:3. So I need to hang on to all of our old 4:3 screens apparently.
You might find a use for them. You just never know where it's going to go.
That's awesome. Mike, what about you? What like cool pieces of technology that have you seen that have really kind of blown your mind that you think you're changing?
Well, I don't know. There's so much stuff coming out now with all the new video stuff too, with these cameras that go everywhere around. It's interesting how they're going to tie that in with the staging stuff. That seeing 360. I guess that's happening already, but I mean, it's amazing what's going to happen in the future with things like that. How we can immerse people in environments. That's what it's all about, right? You're going to bring them somewhere and get them engaged. So I don't know. That's just some of the stuff I'm thinking is going to happen.
Really change things. Yeah. To speak to your point on the video portion, something that I've seen that's been really, really cool was just at thank you for Andrew Langdell, another Andrew on my staff, who mentioned this to me, this live stream, the platform similar to YouTube Live, Ustream, that basically kind of competitor. They basically have like a broadcaster unit that you can switch with and, wirelessly transmit to cameras. They've had that for a while, but they just came out with this awesome thing called a Movie, the MOVI or Movi. I forget what it's called, but it's a 4K camera. And it basically, what it does is, it looks like a GoPro. It's super small. And what it does is using an app, when it shoots it creates 9 different shots that you have. So instead of, if you talk about a typical corporate event with cameras and things like that, you have multiple cameras all over the place so you can cut between different angles and things like that. Sometimes, like, for example, with TEDx, when we're playing TEDx conferences, they want you to have like 8 different cameras to shoot this. And it can get extremely expensive because you have the camera operator, you're talking about multiple days. It gets expensive really, really quickly. Plus you need the operator to switch between. Well, they created this camera that automatically can either record or go to live stream. And I'm excited when we can figure out a way to tap into it for, our traditional moving switching boards, but it recognizes faces. So it creates every shot for every person's face and tracks them. And then also creates a bunch of different other shots as well. So literally on your phone, you can sit here and switch between 9 different camera shots with one camera. Wow. And the camera is only $400. And that's amazing because you look at these broadcast cameras. I mean, it's probably not broadcast perfect yet, but you look at these broadcast cameras, they're $10,000 cameras, and you need 8 of those for apparently a TEDx conference. So that's why I think it's really, really cool too, as well, is that
it's live stream that did that?
Yeah, live stream's doing it. Yeah, it's at first it doesn't look like live stream's doing it, but then you dig a little bit deeper in their site, and then it says like brought to you by live stream and everything like that. But they're trying to move into that product world, which is really cool. So,
there's something that occurs to me though as we're talking about this, because well, that's really cool. I was thinking of drones. Everybody's hopping on the drone idea. And that brought me around to the safety and the understanding of how you're using some of these tools within your meeting, because they're really cool and you can have these neat new things. But like if you're flying a drone over the audience, there's ramifications to that, and if you're talking about doing a live stream, there's ramifications to that. Because as you know, Will, you're going to show different things on a web stream than you're going to be showing to your ballroom. And people are not always asking the right questions. They just say, can we stream it? But they're not thinking about why they're streaming it, who their audience is, how they're going to archive it. And so digging deeper into the safety and the purpose of things is something that I think is important. And people sometimes overlook in the flash to get the new shiny stuff.
Yeah. The purpose is a big one.
Yeah. Start with why, right?
Yeah, I remember live stream makes me think we did that first event camp in New York, it was a long time ago now, 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we used live stream, and we had the whole time had planned to have the audience, the virtual audience, had a whole show flow for them. So when we would break, we would go to somebody else and have an interview. But that was way then. But also we had live stream, and I remember they had no Wi-Fi or anything in the room, so I had to run a line all the way down to the front desk, and we were all at the top. And then somebody kept unplugging it too, so all of a sudden the stream would stop. I'm like, what the hell? And I could run down there and plug it back in. And then the people came back though; they really wanted to be part of it. So that was back before when people were, there wasn't so much live streaming, but it was live stream. And I remember working with their interface the night before, trying to figure it out, how does this work? And but it worked out really well. But anyway, that was a long time ago.
That's awesome. I was speaking of live streaming, I was talking to one of my clients, and they brought up a super great point that I asked them. I was like, so how come you guys haven't, gone into that realm? So they're a really, really big conference. And I'm like, why haven't you guys done live streaming yet? Why, like, this is such a huge revenue opportunity for you guys. And also, you know, just a way to grow the audience. They said, we want to perfect our in-person experience before we worry about adding it another, you know, live streaming experience, basically. So it was very, very interesting for sure. So, I have a real quick question for you guys, kind of to slowly start wrapping up the show. You know, we've talked about a lot of tips to, you know, planning AV and production and everything like that. If you guys could pick one tip, or maybe two tips, if you want to throw two tips in, like your golden goose of tips for making planners process easier. It can be about AV, it can be about decor, it can be about catering. What was one tip that you guys would have to making a planner's process easier?
You want to go ahead, Mike?
I can go really quickly. I think basically is doing some pre-production and spending some time on it. You know, so many people just, it seems late, the last couple of years, people do everything at the last minute, and there's a lot of time to plan out, you know, start thinking about it, get your vendors kind of lined up earlier and start, because you can learn so much from them to make your meeting better. And it seems like some people don't take that professionalism of their, you know, production company, AV company, really get in and start the conversation earlier so you can make a better meeting. And that's the whole thing. That's why we're doing this, is making it better. You know, when the attendees are there, it shouldn't be an afterthought, you know, oh, we're just going to do whatever. It should be beforehand. What do we want those people when they're in the room? What do we want them to do when they walk out that door? Do we want them to do some sort of action? We want them to, you know, whatever it is, work to that action.
Yeah.
That wasn't one thing either. That was kind of a lot of stuff,
but the time thing is really the most important thing to me too. I mean, I've had situations where we had a dealer meeting of 3 cities that we were doing, and we went out on a site survey, thankfully, because this client believed in pre-production and planning ahead, and we got to the ballroom and found out that it would not work for what we were trying to accomplish. And they had booked this room in the best of faith, and they were set up to do the show. We actually ended up moving that location from Houston to Dallas. Wow. Just to be in a ballroom that would be effective for these auto reveals that we were doing for an automaker. And so if we hadn't have had that time, if we had walked in, you know, with our trucks waiting outside and started wheeling gear in, there would have been a lot of stress trying to adapt to that room into what was necessary for the show. Mm-hmm. And so again, the time factor is a huge piece. The more time you can give people, the better work you're going to get out of them.
Yeah, bringing your production company or your AV company, whoever you're working with, on that to the venue for site survey is so important. And like, and you'll say, you know, you think, oh, I don't want to have the expense, but it could just bite you in the ass.
Yeah,
we've all seen it so many times. It's like, you know, there's so many things you can get when you're there. Like you look at, you know, just load in stuff, you know, how far away is it really? You know, how big's the elevator coming in the thing? What can you bring? You know, all these little stupid things that are just like, oh no, like.
Wait, you mean I have to walk 5 miles between hallways in Vegas to get to the ballroom?
Yeah.
For your 3-hour load in?
Yeah.
Oh, the quirks of hotels are amazing. There's one hotel in San Diego that you couldn't take anything longer than 8 foot into the ballroom, because the elevator from the dock, you could only fit an 8-foot piece of truss. So you had to redesign all your truss to not use 10-foot sticks, which are standard, because you could only get these 8s in there a couple at a time and take them up to the ballroom.
That's crazy.
It's weird, the quirks you learn.
Speaking of the timing stuff that you guys were talking about too, one piece of suggestion I have is don't be afraid to flip the script when it comes to planning, because you guys kind of talked about how important it is to bring the AV company on site surveys. It's also important because sometimes the AV company can help you solve other issues you have. You know, we do so many events, we see so much stuff, and a lot of times we're like the basis. We're in there first, building the space. We can see it. We can help you out by doing things like computer-assisted designs. We know how much electricity is going to be used. Like, there's a lot of technical things we can help with. Sure, where you might not. I mean, I like to think I know what food tastes good, but you know, we definitely can help you in a lot of different ways for sure. So I totally recommend bringing the AV company in really, really early when it comes to the timing.
And I've had so many situations too where we'll have done the creative behind their event. We'll have worked with them on their whole creative along for the whole event. And then when you get on site, when you get there, you start to think, oh, this would work really well. Like, here's another creative element we could add to your event that would be really cool. Or, there's just so many things that once you're in a space, as you know, the creativity comes up, and maybe there's something that you could do that would just make the whole event even more fantastic, by being there to come up with something.
Yeah. Absolutely. So to kind of wrap it up, I want to share, we talked a little bit about education resources earlier. Do you guys have any other really cool resources that can be event related or not event related? Like, for example, I've shared the awesome virtual assistant company that I'm using now. Any cool resources that you guys want to share when it comes to anything? And if you can post the links over on the side as we kind of go along, and I'll try to keep up as much as I can too.
Well, there's the one link, which is a Grass Shack branded site survey card that people can print out a PDF of. And so I have a link of that at a Dropbox. It's just in my public Dropbox, and people are welcome to take that down. And it just gives you a little starting place of some of the questions to ask and the things to look for in a ballroom. As far as like other things outside, I interviewed Don Berger from Social Tables last year. And I was on the Social Tables website looking at some of the stuff they're doing. And I was really impressed because they had some very creative things where they were taking their product and using it in some very creative ways. For example, they had people arriving at the airport, and they were using like a seating chart to check people off who arrived at the airport so that they would know to have their packets ready waiting at the hotel check-in and things like that. And I thought that was a very creative way to take a product and move it out of one niche and use it in a bunch of different ways. So I was impressed with them.
Mike?
I was talking to somebody about Social Tables yesterday, and it was very funny. They're all like, what do they do? They're like a seating company. Like, they seat people in a ballroom. Like, what's going on? They got $18 million worth of funding. They can seat people in a ballroom, which I thought was funny. But as John says, they do a lot more stuff than that. But it's kind of funny. That's what they do as a centered thing. I'm trying to think of like outside stuff. I mean, I've talked to Will actually on our podcast a lot about stuff. I'm doing a lot of meditation now. I like that.
Headspace.
I use that.
I finally paid for it, by the way, so I'm paying for it.
Nice. And, there's that's kind of stuff. It's like I've kind of been trying to get more focused on, and I've talked to both of you actually about this, is focused on stuff, doing things. I'm using the 5-minute journal, which is a thing that Will and I talked about. And I got that app that shuts my phone down now. That was one of the things. So
Do you remember what it's called? Or maybe I can post it in the show notes.
It says Forest on here, but it was something else. I can find it. I'm sorry.
We'll post it in the show notes, so you guys will just have to go to the show notes to get the link.
Yeah, and I'm reading a book, and of course I don't know the name of it too right now, but it's like it's about deep working. Instead of being so frazzled with all this stuff, we're so into social media and stuff, but actually setting some time and really focusing on what you're doing is something that I need. I mean, you guys don't, because I know you're both very focused people, but I need that. So
Squirrel.
Exactly. Something shiny. Oh.
Awesome. Yeah, huge fan of all the stuff. Like, me and Mike can go talk all apps and cool things all day long. Something, I guess, let me think of something really cool that I've seen recently. So I started using Headspace, the paid one. So I'll just let that be my one for now. But yeah, definitely recommend Headspace for anyone who's interested in getting in meditation. Awesome app that basically guides you through. Also has a cool, reward system as you kind of complete stuff too, which is really, really cool. I need to add you as a friend so we can compete on stuff. So I'll send you over an invite for that. And we'll get John on it too. So then we have the 3-way competitions on meditation.
That seems counter though, competing on meditation.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if they really compete. I think it's more like what level you can see where your friends are at. And then
it's just so you keep doing it.
Your commitment level, basically.
It just struck me as,
It is kind of funny.
It is kind of a little bit. So awesome. Well, just such a great episode having you guys here and talking about everything from AV to technology to cool apps and meditation and everything like that in between. And just so happy, and thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it big time.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Will.
You guys are so welcome. You guys are awesome. We're going to do this again soon for sure. So if you guys are, we're going to end this episode, but if you haven't already, head over to the blog, helloendless.com/blog. Subscribe. We're going to be posting the show notes with all the links of all the cool apps and cool things that we talked about today, as well as any future episodes if you, for example, can't miss it. If you are watching the show on the blog, we do this 5 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday right here on Blab. If you follow us on Twitter, we post the link right as we go live and leading up to it so you can tune in. And next week, we have an absolutely awesome crew. We have the guys who did the 4K streaming at South by Southwest this last year. Their story is amazing about how they literally push the envelopes of technology and talking about awesome live streaming. I watched some of the live streaming element of it, and then you feel like you're watching Macklemore live. So really, really cool. Really excited to have those guys here next week on #EventIcons. So again, 5 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday, but we got to get out of here. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and John and Mike for being here as our guests. And we'll see you guys all next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.